If you just started playing the season on Necromancer or you're waiting to get into it, you are probably hearing about how amazing all of the different Malignant Hearts are for the builds for the Necromancer. And I gotta tell you, I'm currently hard leveling as Bloodlance. I started at level 1 Bloodlance. And the 2 hearts I'm about to show you made my gameplay experience that was mostly completely solo after level 23 phenomenal. Like, no question, just able to level as any Necromancer build that you want in the game right now with a certain level of competency and comparable speed. I have not felt like stuck behind on Bloodlance like you normally would pre-season 1. You just basically couldn't level as this build at all because it was absolutely trash. But these 2 hearts have made it completely bearable, and on top of that, very fun. The 2 that I'm talking about are the Decrepit. This heart will auto-cast an aura Decrepify, so literally a walking aura Decrepify on top of your Necromancer for the length of time that you roll. If you are near 4 monsters, just automatically you activate this aura. On top of that, it doesn't just cast like a rank 1 Decrepify, it casts your Decrepify. So if you're using Decrepify and then you also have Enhanced and Abhorrent, like most people are going to at this point, on top of having Amplified damage, all monsters that are within its radius as it's active will have Decrepify applied to them, and they will become stunned via lucky hit, and they will reduce cooldown via lucky hit. So they have automated needing to cast Decrepify, and this feels so good in the leveling portion, especially on low gear. Just being able to toss this in very early made my playthrough feel a 10 times better. 20% damage reduction and a slow effect from a Decrepify I didn't even have to put points into is just bananas strong. Now, a lot of people have been asking me like, oh my god, this must make like Infinimus so great in the end game. You don't even have to have Decrepify on your skill bar. You can do all these different things. My only couching of that would be that Infinimus is already really good at clearing density. That's what it's strongest at. That's its strong suit. Not having Decrepify on your skill bar means that you can't proactively use it against single targets and groups that are smaller than 4 monsters. And not casting Decrepify is not an option on Infinimus. You need to have 100% uptime on it. So while I think this will have some place in speed farming builds, or people are just looking to play like open world and Helltide events, you can probably assume that there will be 4 monsters pretty often. It will absolutely slot in there pretty well. But in any case where Infinimus or any shadow build would typically suffer or begin to stutter, it's against single targets and incredibly tanky targets, and this thing is kind of a win more scenario in its best case, and it is literally a detriment in its worst case, because that means that you're not using some other defense or damage heart in this slot. But again, for leveling on a low level character, this is banana strong. It is absolutely ridiculous, the fact that they gave us this. I feel like a superhero when I walk around with it. Now, the one that's probably making the most uproar is the Sacrilegious. This thing is actually ridiculously strong, not just because it free casts stuff, it also doesn't use your cooldown. And on top of that, it actually has a prioritization order that once you learn it, you don't abuse, but you can use it strategically and tactically to get certain abilities to fire off when you want them and when you need them. So let me break down how exactly it works, because it is pretty nuanced. And I know that some people are literally going, why are you using this? It's crap, like it doesn't use the skills that I want to. But once you understand its prioritization order, you'll get the logic behind it and how to use it in the way that you need to. Let's identify the 3 corpse skills in the game, and that is Raise Skeleton, to literally summon a skeleton if you do not currently have one, and not using the Skeletal Priest ability, which heals and empowers them. It's very important to understand that this will not auto-proc Raise Skeletal Priest, heal, and power boost. It'll only resummon skeletons if you are not currently at your maximum cap of living skeletons. Now, the interesting part about Corpse Tendrils is that it actually has its own internal cooldown for how often it prioritizes using Corpse Tendrils, and that's once every 6 seconds. So if you had 2 corpses on the ground and just Corpse Tendrils and just Corpse Explosion, it will first use Corpse Tendrils and then count for 6 seconds before it would use it again. But during that time, since it is ticking every second, it will choose to use Corpse Explosion on the second available corpse. Now, how does all of this play with having skeletons on your skill bar as well? Well, let me go ahead and make 3 corpses from Blood Mist, and let's see what it does when I re-equip my ring that has it on it. So here we have Blood Mist. It generates 3 corpses. I'm going to stay close to them, but I just want to move away so you can see it better. I go ahead and I put on my ring, and it goes Raise Skeleton, Raise Skeleton, Raise Skeleton. Here's one of the first issues that you're going to run into. There are a lot of different scenarios where you may be a summoner build, or you may be using summons as utility, but you're trying to kill a monster with Corpse Explosion, or you need to desperately apply Corpse Tendrils, you cannot rely on being able to prioritize those skills if you have summons and they're constantly dying, because it will always prioritize using Raised Skeleton over any other corpse skill on your bar until you're at your max cap for skeletons. Now, the cool part about this is that it does activate while you're in Blood Mist. It's not like you would need to be able to do the animation yourself. So let me go back into it now that we have at least 3 of our skeletons up. So there, for the first corpse, it raised skeleton. For the second corpse, it raised skeleton, and then it cast Corpse Tendrils on the third corpse. The really important thing to notice about when it used Corpse Tendrils is that that corpse is gone. Typically, Corpse Tendrils actually does not consume a corpse. It's not a corpse consumption ability. That's why it doesn't proc things that say when you consume a corpse, it leaves it there so you can target it later either with Raised Skeleton or Corpse Explosion yourself. But when the heart uses Corpse Tendrils, it will actually use up the corpse, but still will not trigger things that say when you consume a corpse. It's a very interesting interaction and difference between what the normal skill would do in this sense. So while summoning Raised Skeletons will be considered consuming the corpse because it typically is, using Corpse Tendrils gets rid of the corpse but doesn't consume it. And then lastly, when you generate corpses and the Corpse Tendrils is currently on cooldown, it will cast Corpse Explosion. Similarly to Decrepify, it will cast your Corpse Explosion. So that's why you see it's actually doing Blighted Corpse Explosion here. It will read the ranks of your explosion, and on top of that, since it consumes corpses, it triggers things like Grim Harvest. And this is probably like the best use case of this item in general. If all it did was eat up corpses while you're moving from one fight to the next one just to get back your essence for completely passively, it would be a god tier heart. Honestly, it is so good for leveling. It is so good for pushing. It's so good for progressing because it is just passively regenerating you essence, even if the corpses that you're consuming otherwise aren't important to you or are too far away from a target to matter. Previously, on a build like this, if you're very essence hungry, after a fight you would literally stop to cast your own corpse explosions just to get essence quicker. All of a sudden, this heart in a ring is doing it for you as you're going. It's drastically increased my overall farming kill speed and my ability to be efficient and mobile as opposed to standing there and spam casting myself. And I just want to show you the last application of this heart, which really pushes it over the top. Like I've already said, multiple parts about it are the strongest part about it, but this one sincerely is the best. So we're in a situation where we've begun combat. I cast my own Corpse Tendrils. I put my ring on, and then it can also cast Corpse Tendrils. You're able to near constantly spam Corpse Tendrils. And then on top of that, if you are in combat and you automatically have your Decrepify aura up, pushing down the cooldown of your Corpse Tendrils, even at level like 30 and low 40s, I am perpetually re-spamming Corpse Tendrils at the same rate that I would be on an endgame build that's able to spam cooldown reduction and have extra ranks in Corpse Tendrils. Quite frankly, I think that this thing is actually too strong. Now, I know, every single time I say that, you go, oh, shut up, we don't want Blizzard to nerf it. I don't think that they're going to nerf it because I think this is actually kind of the answer to some of the things that we've been asking for in this game. People want to be able to play this power fantasy of like a Summonmancer that's lower APM, a little bit more AFK, right? You don't have to worry so much about managing your minions because it would just be cool if they could stay alive longer or if they could summon just because you have them on the board, etc. This heart kind of does all that for you. It resummons your skeletons as they die. It casts Corpse Tendrils for you in sticky situations where you're currently in Blood Mist. And maybe when you would come out of Blood Mist previously, you would need to then cast Corpse Tendrils and maybe you die during that time. And on top of all of that, as you're just kind of going through and doing your typical farming, it does your Corpse Tendrils, it does your Corpse Explosion. This heart alone is basically Infinimist micro, and the moment that we put this onto endgame Infinimist, I think it's going to be disgusting. Like, I think it's going to be pound for pound the best build that the Necromancer has available for it, maybe only for dungeon pushing, but also just generally increasing its overall kill speed. Because remember, you can use this and you can use the Explosive Mist aspect. Not only that, you can use Explosive Mist and this with Howl from Below, since it will cast your Corpse Explosion for you, and they will be running exploding zombie corpses that will then carry your corpses with you. It has made progression so much better, so much easier. My essence issues are basically completely erased. I feel like I'm able to crowd control at a much higher rate. While I'm not personally a summoner, people playing Summoner said that this thing is a literal godsend. Like, they've taken so much of the tedium of being a Summon Necromancer out of it, where all you really need to worry about is like maintaining your raised skeleton buff. And you don't have to worry about like, oh no, 2 mages died and 1 warrior died, so I have to summon my warrior to get back over to my mages. This thing's doing all of that for you. But I want to give a quick breakdown just like mechanically about how all of that works, because it's not obvious reading this thing what it's going to do. And people have been having different examples and different experiences because maybe you weren't close enough to a corpse, or maybe you didn't have both skills on your skill bar, or maybe you weren't seeing when it was auto summoning a skeleton, but then you're wondering why corpse explosion wasn't going off. I hope that this helps. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope that you're enjoying the season, because I know I sure as hell am, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.